It's January 5th, 2016. We're here for our first regularly scheduled Brattleboro Selectboard meeting of the new year. Welcome to everybody who's watching us on TV, whether live or recorded. I want to welcome everybody who's in attendance, and I want to thank our ASL interpreters, members of the press, and BCTV operators, and all of the members of the staff who are here with us tonight. We convened the meeting at 5:15 in order to conduct committee interviews, and then we went into executive session to discuss a series of matters as allowed under the open meeting law. We didn't make any decisions during the executive session, and we're now here to convene the regular business meeting. The first item on tonight's agenda is to approve the minutes from December 8, December 15, and December 21. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes as presented?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the minutes from December 8, 15, and 21 as presented. Is there any comments or suggestions or proposed edits from anybody on the board? Is there anybody who's in attendance who's got anything to say about the minutes? Hearing none. Here we have motion to approve the minutes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. The next matter on the agenda is chair's remarks. It's a very packed agenda tonight. Happy New Year. Next matter on the agenda is town manager's comments.
I'm going to take just a little bit longer.
Yes, please.
Two items this evening. There's been a lot of concern expressed over the last few days about the snow clearing and the condition of Main Street during this holiday weekend. We've heard from people in the community about it. We've had a lot of consideration related to this the last 2 days as staff. And I wanted to give a little bit of context, both for the board and especially for the community, about how those decisions get made. First and foremost, we weren't happy either that Main Street was in the condition that it was in, with the snow that was encroaching out into the parking spaces, and then because of the cold weather this weekend got well frozen before getting mostly cleared away last night. But there's a reason why it happened the way it happened that has to do with all the different variables we deal with. And so we want, first of all, for people to know that it's always our intent to clear. We've been asked, gee, is it just a new policy to come out a week later to clean up the snow? We want people to know that's not the case. We will always come out quicker when we can. And also that, the flip side of that is true, that there will be times when the variety of circumstances cause a situation like this to happen again, even though our intent is not to let the snow be there that long in those areas where it is inconvenient and can be unsafe for people. And the variables that we deal with, it depends on actually what part of the week the snow falls. In this case, it actually also depended on the fact that it was a holiday weekend, not just a weekend that was occurring. It can depend on the type of precipitation. The regular snow is easier to deal with than the combination of the snow and the sleet and the ice that we got this time. How much falls, how long it falls, whether it falls for several hours or for a couple of days, and variability that's harder for us. All those kinds of things most of us can detect who aren't involved directly in dealing with removing the snow and keeping the streets safe. But one thing that really Public Works knows and deals with that most of the rest of us probably don't notice is the difference within the town based on the different street surfaces and the different elevations that we have. And so it can be very different conditions out in the area around town that is still our responsibility to go out and clear than what we're experiencing in town. That happened in this storm. And so after spending the better part of 16 hours clearing the entire community in the normal manner during the beginning of this event, the crews, after a short rest, actually spent the better part of the next day out in the outer areas of town where there were some really treacherous conditions because of the higher elevation and because of the rain that was falling and freezing, to keep the roads safe there for people to be using all the roads safely in the community. We didn't have any accidents in the community of any significance during the storm, so that was really fortunate. But by the time we got to where the troops could go home and get a rest and then come back and do the kind of nighttime clearing that they do on Main Street, we were into the holiday weekend. And that's when it became a calculated risk that we took. There was some forecasted 40-degree weather that didn't come.
Right.
Instead, we got a plunge in the other direction. And what might have been helped by nature with some melting, instead got frozen in place, and it was a bad situation. The reason we took the calculated risk is once we're into a holiday weekend, it's $10,000 a night for sending the crews out because of the overtime expenses. And that's a very conservative calculation just based on the fact that it is holiday pay overtime kind of consideration as opposed to being able to schedule the work during a weekday. And it doesn't involve any of the extra costs related to the equipment and so on. What we do and will do whenever possible quickly after these storms and do routinely when the circumstances are right is adjust the work schedules so that the public works employees can go out and do the snow removal after the initial clearing and safing up of the streets. Immediately go back out at the next opportunity to do snow removal from Main Street and then also from Canal Street and Western Avenue on 2 successive nights. And to do that in a manner where they actually work a night shift for 2 nights and then don't come in the following day. The town doesn't incur the overtime. The employees clear up the area. We're ready for the next storm to come. That's the way these things are managed when the town is able to manage them that way. The circumstances of this particular storm didn't enable us to do that. And with a $90,000 budget for the entire year for overtime expenses and being still early in the winter, we just didn't think it was a prudent expense to spend the extra for the holiday cleanup. And that's how that happened this week.
Just a quick side note on that. I've been plowing for, 25 years, and I've talked to a bunch of people that were plowing also, and it is one of the worst storms, the worst 3-inch storm that I can remember. It was impossible. It was impossible to plow, and like you said, it froze up, and the minute it froze up, it wasn't going anywhere, and the ground was soft underneath. So I mean, there was so many things that happened in that storm. And then the ice the next day when it was supposed to, when things were supposed to let up, it just made it cement. So it was an impossible storm. For a small storm, it raised havoc everywhere. So.
The second matter is one that the board is well aware of because of some consideration that we've had around this, but I need to call to the public's attention because we've reached an unfortunate and pretty extreme situation related to one of our construction projects. Very unusual to reach a point where difficulties on a job cause us to consider actually terminating the contract and calling the performance bond and moving in a different direction. We've reached that point related to the Black Mountain Road gravity sewer project. So the town attorney has sent to the bond company and to the contractor a letter dated December 30th that puts them on official notice that the town is considering this action. They have a minimum of 10 days in order to take additional actions to put the project back on the proper course. But as of now, what we have is a situation where the project has not met the town specifications, and we're not sure that the contractor will be able to meet the specifications. So the project was intended to provide a gravity sewer to replace the force main at that location that was pumped from a pump station currently. It was expected to be a simple job where there was going to be a portion that was directionally drilled underneath the interstate and then a portion that was laid in a more traditional open trench manner down on Black Mountain Road. The expected completion date that's set forth in the contract is July 31st, long since passed. From early in the job, there were some difficulties that we encountered. There was work done with the contractor and with the engineer to try to address those problems that occurred in the job. But as time has gone on, the first problem has not been completely cured, and in the meantime, additional deficiencies have occurred where there's now multiple different ways in which the project doesn't meet the town specifications, and the pipe will not function in its current condition. And so for that reason, we've sent this letter. It creates the ticking of a clock and the official contractual relationship. We just want to make sure that it's also clear that it is our hope that it won't be necessary ultimately to actually terminate the contract and call the bond. This protects the town by putting us in the position where we can do that if it becomes necessary to do it. That action can only be taken by the board, so we would be back on a future evening to address that with you. But in the meantime, the contractor and the bond company have an opportunity to present a plan to the town of how these problems at the job can be cured and how they can deliver to the town a project that will function as it was specified to in the contract documents. So we're hopeful that that's where we will arrive at the end of the day. We'll keep you informed, and that's all I have. Plenty. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Next matter on the agenda is Select Board comments, committee reports. Is there any Select Board comments or committee reports?
Happy New Year.
Next matter on the agenda is public participation. This is a good time for anybody who wants to speak to something that's not on the agenda to do so. Yes, sir. You should use that microphone over there for the television audio. And tell us your name, please.
Thank you. I'm Jay Jacobowitz. I am a homeowner, taxpayer in Brattleboro, and I want to talk about the police fire project, having attended the Academy School presentation.
All right, so that's on the agenda.
Is it?
It is, and so that would be a good time to talk about it.
Then,
Yes,
not now.
please. If that's okay. Thank you. Anybody else want to speak under
There are
public
no
participation?
agendas, by the way. There's no more agendas.
No other public participation? All right, then. First matter on the business agenda, under unfinished business, is the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance Annual Work Plan Budget and Representative Town Meeting article. It is my understanding that Town Manager is not yet ready to present us with the additional information that we requested at our last meeting. Would that be fair to say?
That's correct. I'd like to make sure it's clear that I've made some progress on that, and the various parties with whom I'm communicating around it have been very helpful, but we're not to closure yet, and so I'd ask that you defer that matter to next Tuesday, please.
I move that we defer further consideration of the DBA's FY17 work plan and budget to the Select Board meeting of January 12th,
Is there any further discussion?
2016.
Thank you. Any further discussion about that motion to take this matter up at our next business meeting? Anybody on the board?
Well, that's not going to set them back at all, is it?
No.
We just need to complete this piece of work in time for their funding request to be included on the warning for town meeting.
Right, okay.
Anybody who's in attendance have any questions or comments about that? All those in favor of rescheduling the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance Work Plan, Budget, and Town Meeting article to next Tuesday, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Next matter on the agenda under unfinished business is solid waste matters. Peter?
Yes. You have a memorandum dated December 24 in your backup from Patrick via me to you. We'll be happy to go into any of what's here in as much detail as you'd like, but given the history of this matter, the multiple occasions on which you've considered it, and the length of the agenda tonight with other business, I would just summarize by saying the negotiations with Triple T have come together well, so that we're positioned now, if you wish to authorize that we actually extend the agreement with them. So it would be an additional 5 years plus the 3 that remain on the current agreement. Would be under contract with them for 8 years. It would be officially addendum number 3 to the original contract with Triple T, and it would provide for the transition to every other week garbage collection and the resultant just over $100,000 total savings to the town on an annual budget basis. It also would allow within the first year of the contract for the town to exercise the option to switch over the collection of our recyclables to a single stream process and heading those for transportation and disposal as had been previously proposed at Casella and Rutland. If that becomes necessary as the matter evolves further with the solid waste district. Based on the communication we've had in the last month with the solid waste district, we hope that isn't necessary, but we thought it would be useful in protecting the town's interests to have in this addendum number 3 a kind of a placeholder for that if any time within the next year we need to move in that direction, the town would be able to at the town's sole discretion. After that, any other time during the remaining 7 years of the agreement that the town might wish to move in that direction, it would be subject to just reasonable negotiations between the parties.
Dave?
When we started talking about this, one of the things that came up among us was the, we just were 6 months into the new law and the new system and the recycling and the compost and the pay-as-you-throw. And, having something like this right away, oh my. And I've actually heard that from a couple of people. And the sense is that when we make this move, that means tomorrow, we're going to 2 weeks. And I just wanted to be clear, it's going to start in July.
That's correct.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
we've
I'm sorry
got
I didn't
6
make that
more
clear.
months of getting we don't seem to have a lot of bugs.
The intent-
or rats or mice either, but the system seems to be working pretty smoothly, but we'll have 6 more months of experience before this starts.
And importantly, yes, so six more months for additional adjustment to occur to the degree that people in the community need that. But very importantly, 6 months to provide the education, similar to what we did during the spring a year ago, getting people ready for pay-as-you-throw. There will be some scheduling information that needs to be shared. We need to have people not just able to manage their own household waste in a way that allows them to bring out the garbage just once every other week. We believe that most households are, in fact, in a position now where they could probably handle that change. But every household needs to be well informed about what is their day, which is their week.
Right.
And so we'll create a schedule, make sure that it's very clear in that regard, publish it in lots of different ways, and do the same kind of educational campaign this coming spring that we did last year for Pay-As-You-Throw.
Anybody else on the board have anything to say
Yeah.
about going to every other week garbage collection? Kate?
I just have a question. Before we do, we're not approving a public education campaign right now, right? We're
There-
going to do one, but we're not going to, because I don't think we need all
You're-
of that stuff we did. So I
you're-
don't want to sit there and approve something.
You're not approving any specific public education
Okay.
campaign. I can tell you, though, from the discussions that we've had with Triple T
Yeah.
about how this change will be implemented,
Yeah.
it'll be really important for people. There'll be garbage collected every week.
Yeah.
So basically, where there are now 4 zones of the town, there'll be 8 zones of the town. And it'll be, to the maximum degree possible, if somebody is a Tuesday, Tuesday is their collection day now, Tuesday will still be their collection day. We believe it'll be 100% possible to keep that way.
Yeah.
But half the Tuesday people are going to be on one week, and half the Tuesday people are going to be on the week after.
Right.
And we need to be very clear about where the boundaries are and get all that information out into the community. And we need to not be doing that just in the last couple of weeks
No, no.
before July 1st.
No, I agree, but I think, I don't want to go into it right now, but
There isn't a specific plan yet. If you approve this tonight and we move towards, we'll execute this addendum and start moving towards the implementation of the every other week, we will develop an education campaign that we can roll out in the spring.
and if,
Anybody?
oh.
No.
If somebody, say we do this every other thing, and we find out it just doesn't work, can we go back to every other week, or are we locked into every week? I mean,
No.
every week, or are we locked into?
We certainly would be able to go back. What we can't tell you at this time, and what would have to be negotiated at that time, is what would be the cost. It wouldn't
Right.
necessarily be throwing the switch on and then throwing the switch off. There may be other implications to switching back.
Right, and I don't anticipate, but you know how if people are lying in the streets with their trash because they have nowhere to store it,
Right.
some horror story, which hasn't happened with Pay-As-You-Throw, but you
Right.
just never
And,
know.
and again, the reassurance here is the behavior of the residents and the participants in this program is what makes this possible. So the program has been successful not because of any particular aspect of the public education campaign or any particular aspect of what official parties have done, but because the community responded so well and has moved so much of the waste stream over into recycling and especially into compost, that now the garbage waste stream is much smaller and doesn't include the kinds of wastes that rot and become smelly and health hazards. And so we think there's an opportunity because of that behavioral change to do this and save $100,000 a year. That's what makes us very confident that this can be successfully implemented. We just need to make sure people know it's coming.
Great. We got 6 months.
Yes, exactly.
Would you like a motion? Oh, somebody else could.
Is there any further comment from anybody on the board? Is there anybody who's in attendance who wants to speak to the looming motion to cut garbage collection to every other week? Make the motion, and then I'll make a comment.
Then we authorize the town manager to execute addendum number 3 of the contract with Triple T Trucking, which includes reduction of the frequency of garbage collection and a contract extension of 5 years.
We have a motion to approve a new contract amendment with Triple T and to change the frequency of garbage collection. I guess what I'll note is that the materials that we've had to form the basis for this change show that between July through November 2014 and then July through November 2015, we've reduced the average tonnage of garbage that goes to the dump from an average of 1,030 tons monthly to 472 tons monthly. That means there's more than a 50% reduction in the trash that we're sending to the landfill.
At $99 a ton.
Well, at $99 a ton, but the behavior
And that's better than what we
is,
projected.
right, the behavior that we're seeing is, quite frankly, one of the things that I'm most proud of in 5 years that I've been on Select Board.
Right.
Because we've cut what we're sending to the landfill by more than a half by implementing pay-as-you-throw. I think there's a lot of different reasons for that, but given that we've cut garbage that we're sending to the landfill by more than 50%, it seems completely reasonable for us to be picking up garbage half as often, which is every other week. And it comes at a significant cost savings as well. It's a form of service cut, but we're saving money as a result. So I'm in favor of proceeding that way. There's been a couple of comments that we've heard in opposition, but we've spent a long, long time considering this in public with the goal of ensuring that anybody who had anything to say about it could come to public meeting and let us know. And there's really been a few comments, but just a few in opposition. And we thank everybody who's weighed in, and I think we're ready for a vote.
Well, because this isn't a state law, this is just Brattleboro's law, and we do, like Kate was saying, we do have the ability, if it just doesn't work, that we can go back. I mean, it's not like pay-as-you-throw, which was state mandated, you know, so this is something that we're gonna try. And again, I can see a little bit of a, you know, the downside to it, but I just think everybody's been doing so great with pay-as-you-throw so far, so that it's worth a try.
Is there any further discussion on the board or from anybody who's in attendance? We have a motion to authorize the town manager to execute that contract amendment with Triple T that will provide for every other week garbage collection. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thank you. Next matter on the agenda is the FY17 budget. Peter?
You have a memorandum from me in your backup on this one, dated December 31st, that provides the results, summarizes the results of the line item review that we did in response to Dave Scholl's note that he sent to me, identifying questions and suggestions regarding a number of different line items in the budget, and also giving the additional information that you requested at our last meeting regarding the use of fund balance. So on the line item review first. We had a good thorough review at staff and looked for opportunities to try to find some additional savings. But in each of the cases, either because of the kinds of factors that we talked about last time related to the petroleum-based products, so some of this related to review of futures predictions of what's going to happen with certain prices, and some of it related to consumption of electricity in areas where, for instance, like the street lights, we've reached the maximum savings. We've actually achieved some really great savings there over a multi-year period, but now have arrived at the point where we're going to be relatively stable with those costs going forward. So for a variety of different reasons, there were explanations as opposed to proposed changes that came out of most of these items. I've had a chance to review that with Mr. Scholes, who I think agrees with that, but he'll speak for himself here in a minute.
Absolutely.
What we did find, and it helped us to be pushed to look at these several different items. On one of those, we did find that we had an opportunity to go deeper, and it is an area where we've already made a cut. Last year, you reduced the telephone line item for the municipal center from $29,000 to $20,000. You did that in response to some changes that had been made in the phone system the year before. We found that we really can go. We believe it's going to run at about $17,000 a year now going forward. There is some room to grab $3,000 more of savings there, and so we recommend that you do that. So pending the fund balance decision that you're going to make, we think that the changes in the budget that are reflected on the, I believe it's the third page of this, actually the second page of this memorandum, including this additional $3,000 change, and then reflecting the 4 other reductions that were previously identified and tentatively approved by the board, that we've reached the point now, unless there are any additional questions or concerns from anybody on the board, where the expenditure side of the budget is complete. Quickly, for the public's knowledge, I'll just note that $22,750 of the savings from what was originally proposed back in November would be for reduction of the assessment paid to the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District. $105,500 would be the savings for the reduction you've just approved in the garbage collection frequency to once every other week. $18,900 of savings for reducing heating oil from estimated $3 per gallon to $2.50 per gallon based on the futures analysis we did. $5,000 reduction in the electricity line item due to the net metering credits for the solar project that we're participating in. And now this evening, a recommendation for $3,000 reduction in the telephone expenses. We recommend that you give final approval to those 5 changes and take the action, whatever action you deem appropriate after our discussion here in a moment about fund balance. And then, unless there's anything further that the board wishes us to pursue, we'd be ready to bring you an updated, potentially final budget for your approval to send to town meeting.
Yes. Does anybody have any questions first about any of the individual line item reductions that the town manager has just summarized, which really summarize 2 months worth of work that we've had on this budget? All right, so then the remaining inquiry at this point is what to do about the fund balance after spending both capital fund balance and operating fund balance on specific project-related items. We still have $268,450 in the fund balance in excess of the 10% fund balance that we've adopted a guideline of trying to retain in the bank. And we asked the town manager to give us some information, which is included in the materials that have been distributed in preparation for this meeting, about how we might spend that $268,450, whether it be all this year all next year, or half this year and half next year. And with the remaining decreases in various line items that were just discussed, if we were to spend the entire $268,450 in what we characterize as excess available fund balance in the 2017 fiscal year, the tax increase at the municipal level this year would be 0.66 cents. So 2/3 of a penny tax increase at the municipal side. Originally, and I was just looking for that, Peter, what was the original?
4.32.
4.3.
So the original increase was 4.32 cents in the budget that was circulated beginning of November, November 3rd. And so 2 months later, we found about, I think, a penny in decrease from other items, or
Yes.
2 pennies.
Yeah.
A penny in a decrease from other items, and then like a penny and a half, and then 3 cents from use of this fund balance. Actually, it's a little bit different.
2.5.
from that, right?
I'd say
Yeah.
about a little less than a penny and a half from expenditure reductions, and about 2.5 cents reduction if you choose to use the entire amount of fund balance.
All right, so we can give the Brattleboro taxpayer just a 2/3 of a cent tax increase before any police fire expenditures. Or we can use all the fund balance in 2018 and before police fire give a 3-cent tax increase. Or we can do 50% of the $268,450 this year and 50% next year, and pass on a tax increase of 1.82 cents per $100 of assessed value.
Yep.
So, first off, what's the board's pleasure? Anybody on the board got a position about that? John?
You always know my position
I
on,
don't know your position always, John.
Take
Tell
that
us.
and another 76
Well-
and make it nothing.
on this one. You do know, because I've always said that, any excess should go back to the taxpayer. John knows that from day one. So that's my position, that I think that's the way we should go with this.
I think we'll just move right across the table.
Yep.
Kate?
I'm
If you
actually,
want to pass, that's fine. We'll.
no, I mean, I'll just be honest, I'm really conflicted. I would like to give it all back this year too, but I worry about subsequent years. And I think that's my,
We did last year, too.
I know, but that's my worry. This looks all really great, ooh, look at this, but 2 years out, we're gonna be going, we don't know where we're gonna be. And I worry about that. And how much of a, it's good now, but will everything shoot up to a way that's, and again, we can't forecast it. So I'm really conflicted on how to do this, because I'm looking more than just out to 2018. I think we need to keep that in our minds when we figure this out. And, we could end up with more money that we can spend 2 years from now in surplus funds, but we don't know that. And so I'm just trying to figure out how to make it the easiest on the taxpayer.
But just to, you also had that same concern last year and the year before when we had, when we spent the, what was it, 300?
Right.
And, your fears were, but it didn't come to fruition. So I just think that, if the sky is falling, I think this is the best way to proceed, but, and I understand
I'm just really, because I'm conflicted.
Yeah.
On, and I'm assuming these figures already include the bond payment on the $5 million.
Yes.
They do.
They do,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of these figures already include that, and it should be noted that when you're looking at how, if you did choose either to use the fund balance next year or to do a 50-50 split, the out year number, the next year numbers include an assumption that the operating expenses of the town next year would increase by 2%.
Okay.
So I just want to note that, because the incremental amount for the debt service on the different options for the police fire fire don't match up exactly to what you've seen in the police fire information. And the reason for that is because of the anticipated, we try to be prudent
Right.
and recognize that there would likely be some increase in expenses for town operations next year, so we use a 2% factor.
What would be the tax increase if we used all the money now and not in 2018? Like, how much does it go up?
We won't know that.
From one year to the next?
Do we know? Or are we based on, like, you say, a 2%? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, what's the figure without, in 2018, without using, if we used all the money now, we didn't use
Yes.
any money in 2018, do we know what that figure would be?
Yes, what would the increase be in 2018? Or what would the increase be this year if you waited? The increase this year, if you waited to use the fund balance until next year,
Right.
the
No,
increase this year would be 3 cents.
Right, I know, but what about if we used it all now? Like,
If you use it all now,
What's-
then
do we know what it
Well,
would
we
be?
won't know that.
yes, then the FY18 scenarios are the three that are shown there with the tax increase with the minimum plus project, the tax increase with the Black Mountain alternative, the tax increase with the option
Right.
A alternative. So you asked last time for what would the combined impact of the various project alternatives and this year's operating budget be, and that's
Right. Well, I'm
what
trying to
we've
figure out.
shown here.
I'm trying to figure out if we use all the money now.
Right.
What we have here is just using the money. We don't have it, if we don't use the money, what the tax increase will be in 2018. Do you see what I mean? I'm trying to figure out how much,
You do have that,
but this is based on
but
using.
what you don't have
it.
it is in a scenario that doesn't
I mean?
include the projects. We could probably run that quickly, but it would depend on the expenditure decisions that you make next year.
Right, but if we can, right, but I'm saying is if we can figure out how much it's gonna be.
So let's look at this
Do you see what I'm
chart here.
saying? I'm thinking if we can figure this out, why can't we figure out how much it's gonna be if we
Well,
don't use
because
the
next year
money?
we don't know what
Well,
the
we
excess is gonna be.
But we have to have some idea if we know we're gonna go with 2%.
I think that we have those figures right here in the
Yeah.
use of unassigned fund balance chart
Yeah.
that you're looking at right now.
Yeah.
So I think what you'll find is that let's say that we are choosing the Black Mountain Road police fire alternative, which is the third one down
Yep.
on that chart.
Yep.
If we choose the Black Mountain Road police and both fire department rehabilitation alternatives, then the total tax increase in 17 and 18 together, anticipating and predicting a 2% increase next year, is 8.7 cents. And you get that in the first column that says all in 2017 by adding 0.0066, which is this year's tax increase, to the 0.0804 increase for the Black Mountain Road alternative, which then gives you 8.7 cents tax increase over 2 years. You get the same thing in the second column by having a 0.298, that's 2.98 cent increase this year, and then 5.72 cents next year to build a Black Mountain Road alternative. And then the last one, using half and half, you increase 2 cents this year and almost 7 cents the year after.
But what I'm confused about, and maybe I'm just being really dense here on math, I thought that these columns were saying we use the fund balance. If we use the fund balance, the tax increase in all of it in 2018, the increase is, with using Black Mountain Road, would be half a cent.
No, it's
Point-
5.7 cents.
Well, that's what I
Right.
mean, yeah. Right, but what I'm saying is, if we don't if we
Any
use
of it?
all the
Yes.
money now and we use it, we don't, we use it all in under 2017 and we don't do 2018, what's the increase? Because this chart, doesn't this show
Right.
if we use some of the money?
Right, no, yes, so what it says, the left-hand column
Yeah.
is if you use all the fund balance this year, so you'd
Right.
have a less than a penny increase this
Right,
year.
right.
And under the Black Mountain scenario, you'd have an 8-cent increase next year.
Right.
Then the
You
next
could
one is-
smooth that impact of
Right.
the project if we used all the fund balance in 2018, it'd be a 3-penny increase this year and a 5.7-cent increase next year. Or split the fund balance usage 50-50 between the 2 years and have a 1.8-cent increase this year and a 6.9-cent increase next year. So that gives you the
Right.
order of magnitude feeling. You don't know exactly what you'd be looking at a year from now because that involves a
Right.
lot of variables that we're going to live through together in the next year. But it gives you an order of magnitude feel for how
Okay.
large the variation could be between one year and the other.
But the one variable we don't have is how much of an excess, if we have any,
Right.
of a fund balance next year. We won't know
Well,
that.
this is my question. See, this is where I think I'm on a totally different universe here.
He's just off the planet.
I'm just off the planet. I'm just, I get it, but I'm not, you're not answering my question, but I
Is
think
it
I'm not-
cold?
Okay.
Yes, my brain is freezing. I'm just trying to figure out, because I remember one time, we had this big giant chart that had, and I think that's probably what I'm looking for. We had this big chart that had, here's what year, from here, 20 years out, whatever the length of the bond is, saying here's what we anticipate the tax increases to be because we're taking out this bond. We have this big giant thing, or here's how what we're paying down.
Yes.
And I was hoping, because that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Right.
Because this is, to me, it's if we use it all now, it's going to impact we're going to have a higher tax rate next year because we're using what we have now.
And that's
I-
shown here.
Okay. So
What, the schedule that you're talking about, that 20-year
Yeah.
schedule, is a debt service schedule that
Right.
says basically
Right.
just like if you're at a mortgage or a car loan
Right,
or whatever, that for the paying down of the bond for the facilities, there's that peak year in year 2, and then a small decline every year thereafter for the next 19 years, and then you're done. That's what that 20-year schedule
Right.
tells you. But that's that one piece of the
Right.
overall town expenses.
Right.
What this is showing you, just for FY17 and FY18,
Yeah.
is 3 different ways in which you could use the fund balance.
And I totally get that.
Okay.
I'm just feeling like I'm missing the piece of if we don't use the fund balance in 2018.
At all? In 17
If you
or
don't
18?
use it either year.
Well, I'm saying if we just use it one year, what happens to the next year? Because this scenario has it, you're using it this year, all in 2017, all in 2018, or we break it up.
Correct.
You want to know what's
But-
in 2019?
No, but what I'm saying is, I don't think I'm saying
I
that's
love
right.
your determination so much. You
So
are
do
not
I.
giving up.
And so does
What's
the
not,
audience.
what's, okay, I know,
I know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what I'm talking about. And I don't think I'm gonna get the information, so I'll just live with what I have.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Well,
I'll live with what I have.
Let's put it this way. The final decision about the fund balance usage
Yeah,
is ultimately going to be made when we approve the budget
Right,
as it's
right.
returned to us.
right, and that's gonna be a big.
Next meeting or the meeting after.
Yeah.
And finally, when we approve the town meeting warning articles, and then at town meeting.
Right.
If you can work with the town manager to
I see so clearly what I want.
identify and articulate exactly what question you're
Yeah,
asking
yeah.
so that he can answer it
Yeah.
before we approve the budget,
Yeah.
then we can have that in
Yeah.
front of us as well.
Jack, can you help her out at all?
All right?
No, and I appreciate that. I'm just
I-
trying
it's-
to work through this.
No.
If you have a question, it needs to
Exactly.
be answered before we
Right.
decide.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And work
Sorry to
that.
hold up the
Not
going
at
down
all.
the table.
No,
It's important.
that's what we're doing. So as soon as you know, work on it with Peter and John, and then we'll have that information in front of us in whatever form you
Poor
feel is
David
useful.
Gunny, don't dare say anything now.
I'm gonna say something. I kind of agree with Kate.
On what?
Hold on, well, only, that's why I knew it might come across funny. In that there may be some merit to dividing the use of the fund balance over this year and next year in order to smooth the tax increase or delay applying the fund balance until next year in order to avoid the staggering 8-cent tax increase if we, for example, choose the Black Mountain Road alternative. However, on the other hand, looking at our tax rate increases for 5 years that I've been on the board, essentially we've increased 0.7 cents, 1.2 cents, 2.7 cents the year that we took the first 5 million out, and then we actually had a minor decrease last year, about a half a penny. And part of me would prefer to give the 2/3 of a penny increase this year and then see what happens next year. So I'm sort of on the fence at this point. I have some comments to make in the police fire section about what I think is a prudent expenditure and a prudent way to proceed, which is different from what we've had on the table so far. So at this point, I'm just going to reserve final decision about whether I think we split it in half or use it all next year or use it all this year, but I understand where Kate's coming from. Dave?
No, I was just going to say, do we know historically how much we've always had in an excess of fund balance, say over the past
Oh,
5 years? I mean,
we adopted this policy,
Right.
this guideline
it was just
4 years ago.
Right.
I don't have it, but I can get that for you, John.
That'd be good.
But one year was we got that skating rink money that we didn't
Yeah.
expect,
Right,
so
right,
that
and
doesn't really
there's-
count. But
I'm
yeah,
just saying, there's
the
always
last
something
couple of
that-
years, it's been
right.
around 1%.
It would be interesting to see.
Dave?
Well, after, since you got a new wrinkle for police fire, I think I better go make another cup of coffee.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of things to say now that I didn't have to say a few minutes ago. But one of them is, even if we spend this $268,000 to reduce taxes, we still have a 10% reserve fund, and that's $1,600,000. So if the sky falls, we can at least fix $1 million worth of it. The other things are that we're looking at FY18 for, this is the 17 budget, and then it's going to be 18 until the impact of this budget, if we spend the savings and then wind up with a 1% deficit, then we've got all that to make up. So, but that's 18 months away, and some things are likely to happen, and some things we know are going to happen, and a couple of things I have a question about whether they're going to happen. One is we know that with pretty high certainty that the solar array is going to get built on the landfill, and we're going to see a significant 38 or thereabouts % decrease in our electric costs. We're also going to receive a share of the lease money for that property that the the company is going to be paying. It's also very possible that we'll see a significant reduction in our waste assessment if things change at the landfill. These aren't things we know are going to happen, but they're out there. They could happen. Things we know are going to happen is we have a very large bond that's about to retire. Is it this year? We won't be paying on it next year,
No,
$200 and some thousand dollars.
Next year, last year.
Next year's the last year. So again, in 18,
Just the payment is going down.
yeah.
Right.
And then I believe I remember, Patrick, a couple of years ago when you were doing all this yourself, there are some other smaller bonds that in the next few years are going to be disappearing, right? And I think we've talked about that some too. So we know that there are some favorable changes coming. We have been looking forward to that. And if we look a little further ahead, and Sean, I hope you know this, the Honeywell project cost runs out is it in three years or
No,
two?
no, I think it's
Oh, it's
7.
7. Oh, okay. Well, I won't spend that one yet then. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that we're not just looking 1 year ahead or a couple of years ahead. We know that there are costs coming, and we know that there are some opportunities for savings, and hopefully others will show up as we go along. And then the potential savings from the energy, from changes or improvements based on the energy audits is also going to, as you see when the Energy Committee does the report, there's a lot of money available. We've generated a lot of savings so far from their work, and they're anticipating, they've got some recommendations for more of that. So I think it's safe to, to get it down to 0.66. And Dave, thanks for going over that multi-year perspective, because I was hoping we could dig another 70,000 out of the 10% and make it zero. But we're in the ballpark, and it's a low increase. So I would like to give all the excess back on the tax rate, to reduce the tax rate.
Donna?
I think what I really would like to see happen isn't going to happen. Having heard from the other members of the board, I'm in favor of, even though it's difficult to not provide some relief this year, I'm actually in favor of using all of this for fiscal year 18. And the reason is because with the police fire project, even if we have an excess next year, I think that the tax implication is likely to be pretty steep. And I feel like it would be easier for the taxpayers to have that spread out over 2 years. So to bear some of that increase this year and less staggering increase the following. And that partly comes from, what I think should be done with the police fire facility and anticipating that the town needs to spend those significant resources next year, that will be unavoidable in order to do that project and to do it well. So with apologies to the taxpayers for this year, I would be in favor of really holding off and hoping that next year provides some excess as well that we could combine with this year's excess to really have it be not moderate but bearable increase each of the 2 years. But if that can't happen, then I would definitely be in favor of splitting it over 17 and 18.
Is there anybody who's in attendance who wants to speak to this question? So what's the board's pleasure about how to proceed at this point? We have 2 members who want to use all the money this year, and at least one member who doesn't want to use any of it this year. And then, well, I think that Kate's in between is what it sounded
I
like.
know, it does.
Yeah, I'm really conflicted
Right,
over this.
right.
I'm really
I would
conflicted.
rather have you completely clear of any questions that you have before we vote on it then.
Well, I want to address something else. There have been many occasions when the select board takes its time to make decisions in order to make sure that all information is available and that we've had an opportunity to gather all possible public input. And I've read in any number of different sources, online and in the press, that select board delays. And
That's us.
I really have to take issue with that characterization. Quite frankly, we've got very significant decisions to be made that all relate to the public interest and the burden on taxpayers and the services that we're providing. And I think it's a really important public trust that we've got here in the work that we're doing. And I really believe that taking the time that's necessary to make sure that all information is available is the right way to do business. So I don't consider this to be a delay at all. We have a deadline to approve this budget in the last week in January and to notice it for the last week in January. And I wouldn't see any problem making this decision on the 12th or the 19th. So unless there's somebody who's got a different view, I'm going to ask Peter and Kate to figure out what it is that Kate needs to know and to put it back on the agenda for the 12th. And then we'll make a decision about the fund balance at that time, having heard what everybody's view is. And we'd like to invite anybody who's got any comments about use of the fund balance to come here to select board meeting and tell us, because that's the business that we're doing here on behalf of the public.
Peter, good luck with that meeting.
Just a comment about delay. One of the things that we've delayed is the final decision on the police fire facilities, and one of the reasons is we want to know what we're doing. And an example is the next item on the agenda, which is to talk about the impact of moving Black Mountain Road. So I don't mind being called a delayer.
So I think that we've addressed everything relating to the budget at this point, except the outstanding question about how much of the fund balance will be applied when. And we'll look forward to seeing some additional information with next week's backup binder materials. And then maybe we can make a decision next week about how much of the fund balance we're going to use when. Thanks, everybody. I thought that was a very healthy discussion. So the next matter on the agenda is the police fire facilities project. We've got 3 sub-items. First is the questionnaire. Second is the impact of moving the police department to Black Mountain Road. And third is the future of the municipal center. So I'm going to start by talking about the questionnaire, since I did the bulk of the work drafting it. In the binder this week is a questionnaire that essentially describes the alternatives that have been discussed to date about the police fire facilities project. It's a 3-page document that provides significant detail about what work would be done under various alternatives and what the cost for that work would be. I did the initial draft. Members of the select board and the administration weighed in and made changes to the questionnaire to bring it to the form in which it's currently been made publicly available on the website and distributed to members of the select board. I think that it captures the essence of what is the project, and it's an opportunity, to the extent that people want to weigh in, for people to tell us what their view is about what we should do on the police fire facilities project. And I'm in favor of proceeding with distribution of this questionnaire in the most cost-effective and widely distributed manner possible, in order to give people an opportunity to weigh in on these various alternatives. I asked Peter about mailing it out, and he told me that it was way too expensive, and so we're not talking about mailing it out to everybody in town. So I'm going to then ask Peter to talk about distribution of the questionnaire, unless there's anybody on the board who's got comments about how it's currently worded. Anybody got any comments about how it's worded? Is anybody who's in attendance, has anybody read it and have any comments about how it's worded, the questionnaire? All right then, so Peter, if you then would talk with us about how we can distribute it.
What we'll do, if you approve this tonight for us to move forward, is use the online service SurveyMonkey to create a convenient way for people who are online to complete the survey and have the results automatically compiled in a very efficient manner for the town. There's a $300 per year cost to subscribe to SurveyMonkey and use this tool, so we could use it now, we could use it for other purposes later in the year if we wish. Be far less expensive than the several $1,000s we'd have to spend to mail out a questionnaire. And we have heard from people in the community that they'd like the convenience of us using online communications more often. So we think this is a really good opportunity to do that. At the same time, we're concerned that there are people in the community who are not online, and SurveyMonkey isn't the most convenient way for them to participate in this opportunity that you're offering to the community to be engaged in this final stage of decision making. And so we think that that can be easily overcome by on the town's website and in the news release that we would publish and through the town's Facebook page, all the different ways in which we will push this out into the community. We would also put information about how any individual who wishes to get a hard copy of the survey can get one, so that they can fill it out the old-fashioned way and put it in a box here at the municipal center. So anybody in the community who wishes to do that, we can make it as convenient as possible. For the vast majority of people, by being able to just, click a link, get into the survey, complete the survey, click the submit button, and have it be finished. But for the minority of people who might want to participate and not be able to do it that way, there'll still be a way for them to do it.
Can I ask a question?
And
Kate, go ahead.
just
Go ahead,
one
Peter.
quick supplemental thing. We're also anticipating and respectfully request that we get some help from our friends in the media. We expect that they'll want to assist in this. It'll be part of covering the story of what you're considering this evening, and the fact that you are inviting the community to participate in this manner, that perhaps at the 2 newspaper websites and iBrattleboro and from the promotion that Mr. Johnson can give us and others out in the media, that we get this known far and wide, that folks can either go to the electronic link or obtain a copy of it from us here at the Municipal Center.
Kate?
So we're not physically emailing this to people, or is it just a link that people go to? How are they going to get the?
Right, you link to the survey through, so you actually go to you're completing it at a
I know
electronic location. I don't want to call it a website because I don't know that it's a website, but it is, it's a digital tool
Gotcha.
that's
Yeah.
managed by the SurveyMonkey people.
Yeah.
What we do is, by getting this 1-year subscription to it, we'll be able to go in and create our survey within their system,
Yeah.
and then provide the link to people so that they can go in and complete our survey.
Okay.
SurveyMonkey then will be able to provide the
Right.
tallying of the results for us.
But we're not physically, because we don't have email addresses for people.
Well, you
So-
see, I'm not sure,
Or-
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
But not only do we have email addresses in I think a distributable format for all town meeting members, Moss, and the people who were doing the pay-as-you-throw information gathering, I think probably had a much broader email list where he was distributing.
Because we can email this to people. I was
Right.
wondering if we're emailing the link out.
It's the same, I would hope that we could get Moss, Kaler's, and the Pay-As-You-Throw Committee's email list and just put a new message in there saying, police, fire, survey, link attached, go to SurveyMonkey.
Right. That was my question. Are we going to
Right.
do that? 'Cause
I hope so. So that's what I'd like to recommend.
So I'm going to look to Jan. I'm seeing Patrick also maybe ready to speak to this. I want to be careful we don't overcommit to the volume of emails we're able to transmit in that regard. And I think the board also should consider the transmittal of this directly to a partial audience. So if that partial audience was the elected town meeting reps, I think there's a good basis for that. I think you want to be careful about directing the survey to some others in the community, but not to everyone in the community, as opposed to pushing it out in the more broadcast manner that I was describing, where it would be sort of equal access for everybody in the community.
Yeah, I think the $300 is well spent for that.
Patrick or Jen, do you have any information about how broad an email distribution list we have for residents or voters, or Annette, for residents or voters or town meeting members? Anybody have that information?
I think it's fairly safe to say that we could compile a list from a variety of different sources, pay-as-you-throw, town meeting members, et cetera. But regardless of our best efforts, it would still be a select group of people and not genuinely representative of the community as a whole. I think the method that Peter's suggesting is one that allows any interested party who's heard from the media about this happening to, in effect, self-identify as interested and to email in, and then the link will be provided, if I understand it correctly.
Can we put something on this that would say, it just is, it's not a mandatory question, but what street do you live on? And that way we can get an idea of, without, we're not going to ask for names, we're not going to ask for anything else, but there could be something that we can sort of see where this has been distributed or not. I don't know if that helps or anything.
If just a street name is useful to you, we could add that. We actually, in the discussion that staff had around this, as we were offering our input, thought about whether or not it would be appropriate to actually ask people to identify themselves, name and address. Mainly from the point of view, the one potential significant weakness in doing online surveys is that people who have a lot of interest in a matter can participate in the survey multiple times.
Yes, they can.
And you might not get completely useful results from it. A way around that would be if we had a way of tracking who had participated in the manner that the checklists provide for us in traditional in-person voting. So we thought about that. It might be helpful to ask people to identify themselves, so that then there could be, as they were received, they could be checked off.
Well, can SurveyMonkey do that?
No, there's two downsides to that. Is I don't know whether SurveyMonkey has an ability
They might be able to.
limit that or not. And if they do, it would be, I would think, by website.
By website.
Or not by website, but by email address.
Yeah.
And so people who have multiple email addresses still could participate. I don't think there's a foolproof way to address that. But the greater concern, actually, that we came up with, we were thinking for a while it was a good idea, and as we kicked it around, we thought, that could also have a chilling effect. There may be people who, because in a balloting situation, their submittal is anonymous. They get checked off at the front of the process, and then they get to vote privately. There may be people who would choose not to participate in the survey if they knew that there would be a way to connect their answers to the questions to their identity. I don't know the degree to which SurveyMonkey can protect against those two things to function more like an election, but it's that there would be some of these that we would expect to be submitted manually, and I think you want to be careful about asking people to identify.
I think, I don't know how quickly we could find out, but people are identified by their computer.
Right.
By whatever the code is that is. And one of the methods of keeping people from doing things twice is that if that number shows up, if people have 6 computers, they can vote 6 times, but otherwise they can just vote once from one station.
Right.
So I'm not sure how that is done, or whether SurveyMonkey can do it, or whether it would be a more expensive process, but that's one way to assure it.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to that either, and I don't know if there's anybody in the room who's used SurveyMonkey to be able to answer that question for us, because that would be very helpful if we knew that there was that kind of a limitation on it.
And usually SurveyMonkey does ask for a name. So my thinking on this is, if our goal is to really solicit as much input as we can from our community, and my concern is that we won't get enough responses, but also the integrity of that survey is really important to us. It doesn't seem to me, and please, debate this with me, but it doesn't seem like it would be difficult for most people to take a firm stand and to identify who they are and why they think the town should move forward. So I think there are some things that should be very confidential in nature, but I do think that the integrity of the survey is really important for us to really sort of tally, get our finger on the pulse of where the majority of our community members are coming from with regard to this huge decision, that I would be in favor of having people identify themselves. And maybe the folks that run SurveyMonkey have an alternative to that would provide for confidentiality. But just like letters to the editor, I think if you have strong feelings about it, we should hear from people attached to their name what they think is in the best interest of the town.
I agree with that.
Thank you.
I don't see the benefit of the anonymity. Kate, go ahead.
No. And I was going to say, you can do it however you want with SurveyMonkey. We can ask for names, we don't have to, or we can say, are you a renter, are you a homeowner? But I agree too, we are asking people something very important. And
David, you put a lot of work into this, and I really appreciate it. I just don't think we're going to get a big bang for the buck out of this. That's just my.
We'll find out.
I know, we'll find out. And you know, I'm not going to
We've been harping on people for so long.
poo-poo it, but you know, and if it isn't, you know, and if it's skewed to some degree, you know, how are we going to know? You know, if somebody is that for it or that against it, and it just keeps clicking and.
But I think you can stop it from doing that, because I've done.
I do too.
SurveyMonkey
I think
things,
so.
It's 3 pages.
You're not gonna click,
Well,
you know.
Right.
You can have them at the library.
I hope there's more response than what I think there's going to be. But
Well, I personally am in favor of emailing them broadly. I understand the concerns about it being a selective group, but my personal preference is to take the pay-as-you-throw list, and to take the town meeting member list, and to make the website available to everybody, and to include a box on here that says, please provide name and address.
Yeah.
People who choose not to include name and address won't include it, and that'll be their choice. It's not going to stop it from being tallied, but we'll have some idea then about how many of these are anonymous and how many of these had names.
You could also ask the people that it's emailed to forward it to other residents.
Yep. So that's my preference. I don't know, what does the rest of the board think?
I agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You know, if we try every way we have, that's as much as we can do.
I know.
And if somebody's not going to get it, they're going to say, "Well, I didn't send it to me," and we're going to say, "Because we didn't have your address."
You know, you put the link on iBrattleboro,
Right.
you know, so it's right there for people that are on that site.
Right.
And I'm
100
just,
to 150 of them.
I'm thinking too that there was a comment made that I really have been sitting with, which is, you know, the times when different ones of us have expressed our opinion, right, about what we think should happen, and then somebody brought up the point that we should really hear from everybody who has something to say before we make our minds up. And I think this is one attempt in that direction. So we're hoping to hear from people.
One of many
So,
attempts.
One of the attempts.
Do we need a motion, or?
You don't need a motion. I think there's a consensus I'm hearing here, but I'd like to recite back what I think I've heard and make sure that we're all on the same page. So as far as the distribution, it's nice and clear, and we can commit to exactly how we're going to do this, which is through all the different means that I initially described, plus as much emailing as we can accomplish. So we definitely have email addresses for every town meeting rep who has one, and we'll send to all of them. And then from the other lists that we have available, from Moss Kaler's work and otherwise, we'll do the best we can to push out to as many email addresses as possible. On the question of name and address, I think I heard at least a majority of you say, yes, you'd like to have name and address requested. So we will do that. We'll need to work with, since I don't know the answer as I sit here right now, and you don't have the opportunity to convene again before we get this out, because we got to move as quickly as we can now. We'll need to work with that, with the SurveyMonkey tool tomorrow. I know we can request the information. That I'm not worried about. What control there is on that, and whether it's, IP addresses can be an electronic control as opposed to relying on people to accurately fill in the information and that sort of thing. We'll find out tomorrow morning what that is. And to the degree that, I guess what I'm saying is we'll ask for name and address, but that may not end up being
Control.
determinative of which ones get counted. It just is one more piece of information we can gather along with the answers to the questions.
So that's what I think everybody on the board had to say. Did you had your hand up? Yes.
Are you planning also to have a paper survey at the library, for example? Okay,
Yes.
I wasn't clear about that. And did you say that the survey is currently now on the town website?
The draft was published with the rest of the materials for this evening's meeting.
I see, okay. 'Cause I couldn't find it, so.
Don't use that.
Okay.
What we'll do is be pushing out the final form of the survey in all these ways we've talked about tonight.
And I would encourage you in the final form of the survey to explain to the survey taker what use will be made of the results. And I would hope that that use would include a publication of the results and indicate that this is, you want to know, but this is not necessarily if a majority votes one way or another. The select board is still going to make a decision. And I think people need to be reminded, this is a survey, not a vote.
Speaking of reminding, would you remind me of your name, please? I'm sorry.
Louise Zack.
Thank you.
There is an introductory statement in the draft survey just before the questions begin, and the final sentence of the introduction is, the select board will consider the results of the survey during the select board meeting on Tuesday, January 19th. Is that
Yes.
what you were thinking of in terms of a focus of what happens next?
Right, and also that the results will be published somewhere, so that somebody who isn't at the meeting could find out what the other townspeople think.
Sure. Okay.
So it will be published here.
Anybody else wanted to speak about the questionnaire? I think, yes, Michael.
Yeah, Michael Bosworth, I think the questionnaire is a very good idea. I think just one idea is, okay, you brought up putting a link on Brattleboro, but I think also more and more people seem to be using Front Porch Forum, so if we could get that on
Okay.
Front Porch Forum as well.
Thank you. I'll move that we distribute the questionnaire with any final revisions that the town manager deems necessary based upon our discussion as broadly as possible by email and paper sources, and that we request but not require that names be provided in responses to the questionnaire. That way we have a public record of our having made a decision. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0.
We decided? Way to go.
Yeah, well, we're still under old business, impact of moving police department to Black Mountain Road. So we have two topics under police fire facilities project besides questionnaire as part of our continuing discussion about various potential issues in the police fire facilities project. One of them is moving the police department to Black Mountain Road, and one of them, which is related, is the future of the municipal center if the police station were to be moved out of here. I have some comments, but I'm not going to go first. Anybody on the board have anything to say about any of these matters so far?
I'm here to learn.
Anybody who's in attendance want to speak to one of those issues? Yes. It was Jacob, right? Jake?
My name is Jay.
Jay Kobowitz.
I'm a homeowner and taxpayer. I attended the Academy School presentation.
Thanks for waiting.
Oh, my pleasure.
Sorry.
Thanks for volunteering. I came away with the impression at the Academy presentation, a misimpression that a move to Black Mountain Road for the police department would dramatically change response times to events, dispatch events. I subsequently spoke to the chief of police, who corrected that impression that, in fact, there is not a direct correlation to the headquarters and response times. I think also that the public may have an additional misimpression, as I did, that with the move to Black Mountain Road, that the police have abandoned the most densely populated part of our town, a protected area, and may feel as if that is unfavorable. So I think it's important to communicate that this is not the case, that response times are dependent on the location of the patrol cars at the time of dispatch, for the most part, and that, in fact, protection will not deteriorate anywhere in the area served. Second thing I would like to say is that in listening to the several options that we have, I think that as a taxpayer and hearing the comments at the Academy presentation, that the public was well served by all of the due diligence that took place, and that having that respect has allowed me as a taxpayer, and I suspect others as well, to relax about the quality of the decision-making. And I realized, after, again, speaking to the chief of police, that the Black Mountain Road option will not impact service levels, that it is penny-wise and pound foolish to think that we will be saving money by doing anything other than moving to the Black Mountain facility, which, according to the police recommendations, will solve 6 out of 6 problems, whereas the municipal center patch-up will not. And I think that what we wind up with, bottom line, is a communication obligation to put the public at ease that this is in fact a responsible decision, and the net impact on debt and the tax rate is rather inconsequential over a 20-year period. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobowitz. Is there anybody else who's in attendance who has any comments that they want to make about police fire at this point? And I'm talking particularly about the impact of moving the police department to Black Mountain Road.
Do you mean if we should move it to Black Mountain Road? Or?
Well, I think I'm going to go there right now.
Okay.
So the question on the agenda under Police Fire Facilities Project is the impact of moving the police department to Black Mountain Road. And we've had discussions in the public meetings that we had both before and after Thanksgiving, whether, well, not so much whether we should move to Black Mountain Road, but rather what would be the impact of having the facility at Black Mountain Road, that being the police department, as opposed to a $5.5 million renovation of the police department here at the municipal center, or a lower cost alternative at around $2.5 million. But there hasn't been a lot of discussion about whether moving the police station up to Black Mountain Road is a prudent alternative. I want to speak broadly about my view about the police fire project as a whole, specifically as it relates to the renovation work and improvement work for the police department. I'll just start by noting that one of my most significant concerns since being on the board has been trying to make sure that the tax rate remains as stable as possible and doesn't increase more than the taxpayer can bear. And it's been a real important consideration for me in all financial decisions that I've been presented with and participated in and had to vote on. And I think that the importance of the tax impact of the police fire project is reinforced by the rejection of the budget in the spring of 2014. I've heard a lot of comments over the years about question whether the rejection of the budget was really representative of the electorate as a whole, and I've heard suggestions that we should move forward with as broad a project as possible, notwithstanding that vote, because people believe that the vote wasn't representative. I have real substantial concerns about that perspective. We have a system of government in place that provides for the select board to make financial recommendations to town meeting, and then allows the electorate as a whole to make a decision about that. And I think that the decision rejecting our budget was right at the core of our democratic process here, and that we cannot give too much weight, in my view, to the rejection of our budget by the electorate as a whole when deciding what to do about the police fire project. I don't think we can give it enough weight and too much weight. And I feel really strongly that we need to be the most vigilant as possible about costs as a whole, because this project is expensive. And big tax increases are not things that I think people are comfortable bearing. Now, I've been through this project. I've worked on it for 3.5 or 4.5 years now. I was in the very earliest stages when we brought it back to town meeting, my second year on the board. What was it, 4 years ago? And I have become convinced that the fire department program as currently presented to us in terms of building an addition at Central Fire and building a new station in West Brattleboro are the bare minimum that are necessary in order to serve the public. We have fire equipment that won't fit into those buildings, and doing anything less than the $6 million alternative at Central Fire and the $1.75 million alternative in West Brattleboro won't, or the $1.5 million alternative in West Brattleboro, just won't serve our needs. The trucks won't go in the buildings, and there's no reason to consider doing anything less than minimum prudent plan for either of two fire stations. I am, at this point, substantially less convinced about the work to be done at the police station. And it's with all due respect to the police personnel with whom I work professionally every day since I work as deputy state's attorney. But I think that we really need to question whether the town can afford and really needs to the improvement work that will be gained by the $4.137 million project up at Black Mountain Road, or the $5.112 million addition to the police department here at the municipal center. I drafted this questionnaire, and or the guts of it anyway, and as I compared the $5.1 million alternative and the $2.5 million alternative, many of the needs of the police department were dealt with, it seemed to me, in the $2.5 million alternative. I absolutely believe that we need a Sally Port. I absolutely believe that we need new dispatch. I absolutely believe that we need some accommodations for citizen privacy when people are coming into the station. I absolutely believe that we need separate changing facilities for men and women officers. It would be good to have different access to the cell blocks in the basement if that was possible. And I absolutely believe that we need substantial work bringing the basement up to a standard where it can be used in a manner that's safe. But I'm not convinced at this point that moving up to Black Mountain Road for $4.14 million or building an addition onto the municipal center for $5.112 million really is the minimum necessary for the police department. There are other considerations to be had. There is a benefit, it seems to me, to continued occupancy of the municipal center for this purpose, and maintaining the police department downtown to maintain the vitality of the downtown area. Those are really subsidiary issues for me, however. At this point, I haven't been convinced that the $4 and change million move up to Black Mountain Road or the $5 and change million addition to the building is really what's necessary for the police department. And my preference at this point, if I'm not convinced, is to do the full fire department alternatives at the addition to Central Fire and the replacement of the West Brattleboro station, and then investing $2.5 million here at the building downtown in order to make those facilities as safe as possible here, but thereby bringing in the project much closer to $10 million than 11.5 plus the $900,000 that's already been spent. And I think that that is more respectful of the concern that was expressed by the voters as a whole when the budget was rejected 2 years ago. So I know that's a different view than what's been expressed in the past. There hasn't really been an opportunity to speak to it in prior meetings. but I was never sold on the Black Mountain Road alternative from the time it first came up. I think in the summer of 2014, right after the budget was rejected, and I've continued to raise those concerns. And you know, it's possible that the board will vote out the project at $11.5 million, and that's the way it'll be. But at this point, that's what my position is.
No?
I agree with you 100%. And I think people on the board have known that I have not been keen on the idea of moving to Black Mountain Road from the very beginning when it was proposed. And, you know, I think we talked about, or at least I was sort of emphatic at the last meeting, you know, about really wanting to do these projects, because we have to do these projects. But also doing them in a way that we can get them done. And, you know, I've never, again, been sold on going to Black Mountain Road, and I've had a hard time even getting over that hump, because I'm sort of the one that says, let's keep asking people, because I haven't heard enough yet to convince me that we need to go to Black Mountain Road. So I'm at the same place as David is, and it's not a big switch for me, because I've been there from the very beginning. I just haven't been able to see anything that's telling me that Black Mountain Road is the place to go. So I really haven't changed where I am, but David was so articulate that that's, you know, I would prefer to stay here and be downtown, and I really worry about going up to Black Mountain Road. And I know you can drive around in the cars, but I just think there's something about preserving the police department here, where, you know, the action is, so to speak. That's not the right terminology, but and I think you can do it here, and so, you know, and we always talk about people, you know, either commenting or not. And to be honest with you, I've had 5 people come into my office, and all 5 of them have said to me, "Don't move to Black Mountain Road." And I know we all interact with different people and whatever, but if anybody is asking me right now, what if people told you, they've told me don't move to Black Mountain Road. So I'm the exact same place David is.
And I don't expect this issue to be sorted out tonight, but I needed to articulate that position about the project as a whole, because it's not been publicly articulated before, and I've been formulating it for some time. It really did become crystallized, I think, as I was putting the survey together, and didn't find that much difference in the various alternatives, other than moving the cell block and having more workspace, essentially. Those were the 2 main differences. So, Donna?
Yeah, I just want to say, while I'm not going to weigh in tonight, I really appreciate the thoroughness of the explanation, David, that you offered about why you think it should be full speed ahead with the fire departments, and all of the particulars that you really feel like need immediate addressing with the police department. I feel like I really want to get on the other side of that questionnaire and the input, because for me, a key focus is, and I think it is for probably everybody on the board, is hearing, you know, really hearing as much thoughtful input as we can. We can each have our own perspective, and I do, about what I think would be ideal for this community, and I want to stay with that, but I also really want to be influenced, including by reasoned arguments by my, you know, colleagues on the board. So I appreciate the thoughtfulness, and, you know, you made several pretty compelling points. And I also work closely with the police. One of the things I just want to say, because I think it's important, is, and it was named here by Jay, that when I attended all 3 of those presentations, my fears about having the police department in another section of town were completely alleviated by the factual information, by understanding how the distribution of law enforcement officers is arranged, having the department be very clear about response time, about having officers on foot, where people are dispatched from. And so even though it feels cozy and lovely to have the department front and center, it feels comforting in some, sort of nondescript way, I don't feel worried about it being farther afield. I feel like the quality of the services and the safety will be addressed really solidly. And that's just good information, I think, as we go into making this decision, that we not be informed by something that simply isn't true. And I think getting those facts out is really helpful for people when we are, making a decision about potentially moving the department. So I wanted to say that again. I think it bears repeating.
Good.
There's three things. I think one is the history of the idea of not doing the work here. John probably will remember this too from the police fire committee that sat every week in the room next door and tried to improve this and respond to public concerns. And the reason they started thinking about not doing it here is because there were so many complaints about what's this going to do to this historic building, and it's going to be really ugly, and the back of it's going to look like a hotel, and the front is going to look like it looks, and there's not going to be any parking, and all these different problems that are going to result from doing an expansion here. And so that's kind of why this came around. And if we decide to do that and people start seeing the pictures, we're going to hear that, and probably the first 5 people who come in your office are going to say, that's going to be really ugly, and then we'll be back looking at the design of it. But that's not the most important thing. When we started talking about this time around, and we got a picture, we got drawings of the floor plans, and I looked at the altered plan for this building. It was so obvious that this is going to be a really difficult physical system to function in. It's on 3 floors if you count the basement, which I guess we have to count. And for communications and for smooth operation, for efficient operations, no one would do that on purpose. No one would build a space like that to put a high-speed communications organization in. It's making the best of a situation. But I think what it says here in the questionnaire, Dave, I think really gets at the crux of my position, and I haven't really heard anything yet to move me off of it, and that's that this $2.5 million alternate work here would provide police department with space that is less than optimal for its efficient and safe operation. And that's got to be resolved. That somehow has to be changed. And the next sentence is additional work would likely be required in less than 20 years. So we would say 1.6 million, which coincidentally is exactly what our reserve fund is, 10% of our annual budget. And how much of that is going to get absorbed by those changes over the next 20 years? Never mind what additional costs is this building going to require over that period of time after all this is done. And so it seems to me that the first thing has to be safety, and the second thing has to be efficiency. And I don't think the money is really there, at least not anywhere near $1.6 million in terms of actual savings. So I would just ask you to think about those two things.
I like that formulation when I wrote it, less than optimal.
Less than now, yeah.
For the safe and efficient operation. Anybody else on the board?
I'm going to reserve for a while.
We got another few weeks.
Yeah, more than a few weeks. Anybody who's in attendance want to speak to issues relating to impact of moving police department to Black Mountain Road? So then the next item was the future of the municipal center. Peter, if you would speak to that, because I know that you're ready to talk to that.
Sure.
To the extent we're ready to talk about it.
Yeah, and I think that's actually the nub of it, is
Right.
to the extent that we're ready to talk about it. So, the future of the municipal center would be a separate set of issues that would need to be addressed if we do proceed with the Black Mountain option. I believe that there's flexibility and several alternatives that could be developed out of that. I believe that it is possible for those who would rally around saving the building. I knew that would bring a smile to John's face. Because of its historic character and importance to the community, I believe it is possible to reuse the space to take the administrative functions of town government down to the first floor and lease the second floor as we have leased the third floor and a portion of the second floor. Had some consideration of that with Russell Rice about what that might look like and what potential tenants might pay. There is a tenant that I'm aware of that could potentially take a large space here. There are perhaps others that might be interested in a large space and might take the floor. That would be a great solution, obviously, for us if we went down this road, because we could fill the space and then have a partner in rehabbing and maintaining the building. So in the best case scenario, that's how it might play out. More challenging scenario would be if we needed to do renovation on our own and then lease multiple spaces, but I think that's also possible. And I know, John, that you've spoken and others have spoken about, maybe it's time for us to look for some other owner-occupant of this building and have the town's administrative offices move to some other place in the downtown area. So my answer to you about what would happen here is none of us can know. But I don't think you should let that uncertainty drive the decision that you will make and town meeting will make and the community will make regarding this matter, because if the right place for us to go with the police department is to Black Mountain Road, if that's the right solution in terms of its the relative cost and the functional issues and in the fullness of all the consideration around this, if that's the best alternative for this project, then that's the alternative we should pursue for this project. And then we'll deal as a separate set of issues with the future of the municipal center, because our potential future actions here are not limited. There's actually quite a few different ways in which it could go and be constructively addressed. And there's definitely cost attached to some of those, but that's where then potentially it leads us to if we don't have a partner to renovate the building with, then looking at other alternatives. There's just really such a wide variety of ways in which the town could address that next set of decisions. And there's so much uncertainty related to it, it can't really be effectively factored into this decision that needs to be made at this time. So I'd urge that we park that and have the optimism that together we would successfully address it.
In the Sallyport?
And the Sallyport.
No, park it in the Sallyport?
Park it in the Sallyport. Yes, sure, in the theme.
I'm sorry.
Up on Black Mountain Road.
I'm sorry. Is there anybody who's in attendance who wants to speak to the future of the municipal center? That topic having been noticed up for tonight's discussion.
No, I agree with Peter that the only thing we really can't decide anything about this building until we find out what's happening with the police station. Because it's a moot point, we just don't know. And I won't get into I love this building. I really do. I just don't think we can afford it. Right. So that's, I just want to make that clear that it's not that I hate this building. It's just that it's an old building and it needs a lot of work. And I just don't think the town of Brattleboro can afford it if we ever move, but that's another discussion. So I think that's the best course of action for right now is just to table it. And,
if I might add, I think the way you phrased that was really helpful, because it's the choices as to how we should proceed or would proceed here at the building become clearer once the police fire decision is made.
Yeah.
So that's another reason. I think it's important that the police fire decision get made and that we proceed with those projects, just because it's become such an urgent need for the town. We've postponed for so long something that's so important to us as a community. We've got to do it. We've got to get moving. But it's also true that once we've decided that and not let this be a complicating factor, that then where we go here and how we make good use of this building for the future actually becomes clearer, because either the police department will be part of that or the police department will be going up to Black Mountain.
Any further discussion about police fire facilities matters tonight? Then we're on to new business. Lease renewal at Experience Goods. Peter?
Actually, Patrick has been in communication with the tenants there, and would you please present it?
Sure. Good
Thank you.
evening, everybody. Included in the board packet was a revised lease between the town of Brattleboro and Brattleboro Area Hospice that operates the Experience Goods thrift store down at the Brattleboro Transportation Center, which is at 77 Flat Street. Some initial discussions with our tenants there have indicated that they're really sort of desiring of a greater space. However, they're also recognizing that there aren't too many options that meet their needs if they would like a larger space and also to stay within the downtown. They are interested in extending their lease agreement with the town to include the 3% annual rent increase, as has been the case over the last 5 years. And so the proposed lease, which is included in your packet, is inclusive of those rent increases and would provide for a 3-year tenancy for Experience Goods.
Thank you, Patrick. Anybody on board have any questions about the lease agreement that's been proposed? Is there anybody in attendance who wants to speak about the Experience Goods proposed lease agreement? Then we're ready for a motion.
I'll do it. I move that we authorize the town manager to execute a 3-year lease with Brattleboro Area Hospice, Inc. for continued operation of the Experience Goods store at 77 Flat Street.
We have a motion to approve the 3-year lease for Experience Goods. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thank you, Patrick. Next matter on the agenda is committee report from the Cemetary Committee. Good evening.
Hello there.
I'm Marshall Wheelock. You know your town clerk. We're both on the Cemetery Committee. Also with us tonight is Jackie Stromberg, who is on the Cemetery Committee. I think I've appeared before you before and given you a brief history of how the committee came into being. And every so often we do make a report, just to let you know that we are active still. I believe you received a copy of this sheet which says Cemetery Committee proposals for 2015, excuse me. And I heard back via the grapevine that you wanted to discuss some of them with us, but I'm going to hit a few high points here right now. First thing is something you've heard from me before, the mausoleum. The town owns a mausoleum down at Morningside. It's a very nice building. It was originally designed to be a crypt, although there's a meeting space, if you will, inside where funerals could be conducted, with the slight problem that when you stand in that space and you look up, you can see where the ceiling, which is made of pressed metal, has rusted through because of the holes in the roof, and you can stand there and see the light coming through. It's a nice building, and I think this is probably the third time I've said that it would be nice if we could do something about the roof. We had a trip with Peter, showed him what was going on in the cemeteries in town that the town owns, and he agreed that it certainly could use some repairs, but he was also very diplomatic about pointing out that we might have a little trouble getting funding for it. But this is the third time we've come before you, and each time it's in a little worse condition. So at some point it's going to be a have to do if the town is going to save that edifice. Believe me, we're not talking the same dollars that we're talking about this building. But still, it's something that should be addressed. Secondly, we're proposing that a portion of the cemetery be set aside in conformance with state statutes that offers burial space for people who are indigent, or deceased people who are declared indigent. What that means is that particular section would take, would probably not charge for the use of the burial plots or the opening and the interment. We would restrict it to cremains because that's a lot less complicated. But it's something that the state statutes say the town should consider. So there's that. And the third point that I want to make is we are discussing the possibility of opening for want of a better term, a green area for burials, again at Morningside. There has been a movement over the past couple decades, people wishing not to go through the problem of getting a casket and getting just basically what they want is to be able to take their loved ones, bury them as they are. And that could be a green portion to the cemetery. By the way, there is already one cemetery in town, Meeting House Hill, that has a green burial area. And there is one, what am I trying to say? There's only one undertaker in the state that is certified as a green undertaker. And that undertaker happens to be located here in Brattleboro. So we know there's interest in the area. And for no other reason than maybe it's a good sales device, because we've not had a whole lot of purchases in the past few years of people purchasing plots and wishing to be buried. It could be as simple as just an area where people are buried just in a cloak, or it could be up to wooden caskets that are made with wooden dowels, so that the natural processes are not slowed down. Most usually it's a case of people not being oh, help me out here. Embalmed, there we go. Not being embalmed, or if they are embalmed, it's with non-toxic chemicals. The site itself usually does not have headstones. There may be one stone set to one side that just gives the name and date of death for people who have been buried in the area. There is a difference in opinion depending on how technical you want to get over whether you mow the plots, whether you let them come back to the natural setting, but it's offering another choice for people in the area that want to be buried that way. And I guess what I'm asking for tonight is your agreeance that that's something that we should continue to look into. There's a long ways to go, a lot of questions that have to be answered. There are certain conformances with state statutes, including an act that was just passed as of July 2015 that sets forth how a green cemetery or a green portion of a cemetery can come into existence in the state of Vermont. But if you feel that that's not something that the town should be getting into at this point in time, this would be the time to let us know. Personally, I think it's a very good idea because there is increased interest, and if for no other reason, I think it's a good sales move.
It's a fun topic.
Yeah, well, actually, it's very intriguing, very interesting.
Is it?
So that's what I have to say. We also presented in our little sheet a set suggestions of changes and amendments to the bylaws, including one which states that we will find ourselves in conformance with the town ruling that if you're appointed to a committee, you can only serve for 9 years. Myself and, and a couple others have been on this committee since 2007, so next year is or this year is really our swan song. But I'm not going to discuss all these different suggestions in detail unless you folks would like me to, and we're very open to questions.
Well, first, Annette, do you have anything you wanted to add?
I think Marshall did a great job.
All right, thank you, Peter.
I'd like to add two quick things. Thank you, Marshall, for the good presentation. And you're right, we did go out there and see actually a lot together, not
Right.
just the roof, but the other aspects of the things that you're bringing forward for consideration. And on the specific question of the mausoleum roof, I wanted to just remind everybody that we do have a placeholder for that, and I did acknowledge that I'm not sure it'll stay in the program for the capital improvement as a capital improvement project for FY18, but a year and a half from now, if it stays in there, there's $15,000 in the out year as a placeholder. At one time, that was an actual calculated, estimated number. We'd have to freshen that up and make sure that that's going to be sufficient to do the amount of work that now needs to be done there. But we do have in mind trying to fund that project. It is a case where if we don't get to it soon, the building will be harmed to a degree that will probably face a different decision there. So we're trying to include that even with all the competing needs in the capital program. And then on the question of the ordinance amendments, a good deal of preparation and thought has gone into that. So, if you have any concerns about anything that you saw in the backup, that would be good for us to address that while the committee's here this evening. Otherwise, unless you direct otherwise, it would be our plan to bring that to a future meeting to actually have you give first and second reading consideration and adopt those changes.
Excuse me.
Ordinance.
I believe that these have been passed on to the town council, and that he is making sure that
Okay, he's not yet
our
completed his
sentiments
review.
can be put into
Okay.
legalese.
So pending Bob's thumbs up on it, would bring those forward for your formal consideration.
Anybody else on the board have any comments or questions?
The only comment, I just think it's sad that we can't find $15,000, $20,000 to fix that roof. I mean, to let a building like that go to disrepair. And the next step after that is to probably tear it down, and that's,
Should cost
that,
more than 15,000.
well, even if it costs only $5,000, it just seems like that's a sin.
It's
And we should
it's
be-
an attractive building.
It is, it's very
fits in
attractive, and
nicely.
I think we should slap ourselves on the hand for not taking care of this sooner.
Yeah, the building also has a lot of history.
It does.
It was built right around the turn of the century, around 1900, 1902, I think, and it was built from granite that was quarried in Dummerston.
In Dummerston, that's
and
right.
Vermont marble.
Yeah.
So it's
No,
kind of
I-
a nice tribute to Vermont, too.
And if nobody's ever seen it, it really is it's a neat looking building. It really is. And it's,
You're welcome to come and have a tour with us.
I know,
We'll show you
but
the
I
inside.
probably won't get out.
Is it unlocked?
No,
No.
no,
So
No.
people can't go in? and
no.
appreciate
You
it?
should take a look at it. It's,
I've been around.
Around
I
it,
take
yeah.
a walk in that.
So I think that should be a priority of ours to find that money.
Yeah.
I should wonder.
There are some other points in here relative to security, for want of a better word, and upkeep on the roads, and the recurrent brush that grows up everywhere. But those are for you to consider, hopefully. I'm very pleased to hear that we are in the, we've got a claim on some dollars for 2018, provided things go. Is very encouraging to hear that we've got something other than a flat no now.
Anybody else on the board right now? I'm certainly not opposed to consideration of the green space in the cemetery, and I think when I got the binder, I read through these ordinance amendments and I had no questions. And so as soon as the legal review was completed, we can put it back on the agenda for first and then second reading and then public hearing. And whether it's a claim on money or just a placeholder, we're certainly aware that the roof needs to be
it's
fixed.
Progress for
You
it.
know, we got to the pool this year, at least in part. In part.
Did you have
Many
anything?
other things, Bonneville Road and the like. Anybody else on the board? Mr. Stromberg?
Jackie Stromberg, and I have to bring up the security issue. Since I live right next door to Morningside Cemetery, it abuts my property, I see a lot of what goes on. During the winter, the gates are locked, so that cuts down on some of the vandalism. When I first moved to my home, the police used to come every night and close and lock the gates. That kept a lot of the shenanigans that go on down there and the vandalism down because you couldn't get a car in. For about the last 8 years, they no longer do that. And I have to observe a car full of young people going in, and I gotta tell you, they're not going to visit somebody's grave. I have neighbors who live down at Morningside Commons, friends down there who tell me they see vandalism going on. I've talked to the police at Cup of Cop, where you'll go and have a cup of coffee with the cop. And I had written a letter years ago about the situation, and I don't see anything changing. So I'm making it very formal here tonight in front of the whole town. I have concerns about the vandalism down there, and I'd like to see it addressed.
Town manager's writing it down, so we'll have some follow-up. We get some kind of a report back.
They should be locking the gates.
Anybody else who's in attendance want to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Sharon Couturier. Just to speak in support of the green space in the cemetery, I think I came here to ask if that was going to be a possibility, and to hear that it's being considered. I'm very encouraged about that. There's a lot of interest in that, and I think if it became known that we offered that, a lot of people would take advantage of it. So I really encourage your support for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who's in attendance wants to speak to any issues relating to the cemetery committee? Is there any other business that you want to have us talk about?
I think we've covered what we wanted to say.
Thanks for coming, and thanks for staying around so long.
Thank you.
Have a good night. I believe the next matter on the agenda is the Energy Committee report. Oh, yeah. I think it was a number of weeks ago now.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, months.
I've never seen them.
I mean, because it hasn't been shining in our eyes for my life.
Right.
Must be Chris.
Are we just saying it's so cold here because of the shade?
Right.
There's a heater over here too, which I expect
Does it work?
blow a fuse at any minute.
Yeah.
Greetings.
Good evening. Michael Bosworth, Chair of the Energy Committee.
Paul Cameron, Town Energy Coordinator. Bob Reuter, member of the Energy Committee.
And we have another shy person on the Energy Committee, Ted Montgomery, in back as well. Thank you for the opportunity to give our report. I also want to thank all the past Energy Committee members, and in particular Lester Humphreys, who continues to do a lot of the data work that we see the results of in these slides. Select Board established the committee 2009. expanded its membership to 10 in 2012 and 11 in 2014. We in fact have a couple of vacancies, and hoping that later this evening you might actually fill one of them. There's a candidate for one of the vacancies. Mission of the Brattleboro Energy Committee is to assist Brattleboro residents, Brattleboro businesses, and town government in reducing energy consumption and cost through conservation, increased energy efficiency, and conversion to renewable energy sources. From the town energy, or from the 2013 town plan, these are town energy and climate goals. Reduce greenhouse gas emissions in Brattleboro to 30% below 2010 levels by 2030. Reduce emissions from municipal and school district buildings and operations 20% below 2010 levels by 2030. And increase the percentage of weatherized homes and apartments to 50% of all units by 2030. This last one is a particular challenge, but we're hoping a new program that might happen this year, begin this year statewide, might help a lot with this. Vermont Energy and Climate Goals. This is from the draft comprehensive energy plan that the state is working on. We have 2015 here in this. It's still a draft, I believe, so it's probably going to be a 2016 draft and eventually be accepted. Reduce total energy consumption per capita by 15% by 2025 and by more than 1/3 by 2050. Meet 25% of the remaining energy need after those reductions from renewable sources by 2025 and 40% by 2035 and 90% by 2050. And 3 end-use sector goals for 2025, 10% renewable transportation. In other words, transportation using 20% of its energy through renewable sources. Buildings using 30% of their energy through renewable sources, and electric power coming through 67% through renewable sources by 2025. Now, getting to Brattleboro, I think you've seen some of these charts before, but here is a percent of town budget for 5 different data points, first taken in fiscal year 2001, then updated in 2010. Then for the last 3 fiscal years, we've gotten a lot better keeping that data, and so it's a better sort of comparison the last 3 fiscal years. But it shows that there was a fairly large drop between 2001 and 2010, and since then, sort of a leveling off of the drop. And in all these figures, we have tried to adjust things to the fiscal year 2015 budget, town budget, and the weather conditions and the fuel prices of the most recent years. So weather conditions being heating degree days, so that we're really comparing apples to apples. And fuel prices, we're really looking at gallons of fuel oil or gallons of transportation oil. I think you know that the streetlight project has been a pretty successful one. It's really, in this chart, we're really representing both some initial work that DPW started even before the more recent push to switch the streetlights over to LED lights. But the savings have been substantial, in particular in more recent years when that LED project came into being. So from around $250,000 being spent per year on streetlight costs in 2001, or lately it's about $125,000, a little bit more than that. So 50%, a very substantial reduction, and helping out the overall budget. This is a look at overall energy savings not just the streetlights, but from the buildings and from other sources. So 140,000 in savings between fiscal year 2001 and 2010. And then again, a leveling off, some savings, and those savings picked up when the streetlight project was done. So, but not a lot of savings other than streetlights in recent fiscal years. This, again, is the result of the streetlight costs. And, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong.
That's right.
Okay, I'm sorry. Electricity and heating costs are basically the energy costs to run the buildings, the town buildings. And those have dropped substantially again in the first 10 years, but in the recent years, they've gone up a bit, partly to do with the wastewater treatment plant being a bigger plant with more capacity. But we don't see the savings that we initially did, but again, a lot of initial savings. Paul and I are switching.
One area of town government, as Michael outlined, in most areas of town government, energy consumption and costs have dropped and then kind of leveled off. One area, though, that we're seeing increases in consumption and costs is the town fleet. And this graph breaks down the usage by department, and a couple of departments have had a pretty steady consumption. Police and fire, utilities, and highway have gone up. So overall, there's been a pretty substantial increase in
Paul,
costs.
before you jump, those numbers are all, it's not because gas costs more one year or the other, they're all adjusted to be apples to apples.
Those are adjusted to FY 2015 fuel prices.
Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah, I think also in doing this chart, we didn't mean to point fingers, but it really just looking at the data. There may be good reasons for some of this, so we're not getting into that level at this point, but it's good to look at the data by department, I think.
So just to summarize the cost trends that we're seeing, streetlight costs are down 84% since 2010, substantial savings of over $100,000 annually. The transportation center energy costs are down 15% since 2010. We think that's primarily through the LED conversion that took place a few years ago, annual savings of over $5,000. The wastewater treatment plant costs are up 6% since 2010. As Michael said, we think that's because the plant was, when it was rebuilt, became larger and able to handle more waste, but that's also using more energy. And the town fleet costs are up 34% since 2010. So there's been an annual cost increase of over $45,000 from that. Now I just wanted to briefly outline some of the current and future projects of the Energy Committee. And as we've talked about in the past, energy audits are currently being conducted in all town buildings. This is being funded through the town's Energy Efficiency Fund that was set up a couple of years ago. And we're hopeful that that will be concluded this month. And the result will include a detailed report and a list of prioritized recommendations to present to you. We're also evaluating 6 buildings for possible conversion to wood heat through the Wyndham Wood Heat Initiative, which is a program that provides incentives for towns and school districts to convert buildings to wood heat. As you know, the town is purchasing net metering credits from a solar project in Westminster. And in the last fiscal year, the town received a savings of $17,000 from that project in reduced electric costs. The Energy Committee organized a solar summer campaign this past summer, resulting in 10 new contracts totaling 43 kilowatts for Brattleboro residents. And I would just note that there's been a tremendous increase in solar capacity in Brattleboro over the last year, 42% increase. Brattleboro now has 72 solar installations totaling nearly 4,000 kilowatts. The Energy Committee is assisting the town with the installation of an electric vehicle charging station, which includes a fast charger in the High Grove parking lot. And this will be funded through a grant from Green Mountain Power, so there'll be no cost to the town. We're hoping to get that installed by spring of this year. And the committee will be looking at organizing a campaign of some type in 2016 to assist residents in reducing fossil fuel use through investments in energy efficiency and renewables, possibly another solarized campaign, or possibly a program to encourage deep energy retrofits in homes, which we've been learning about. And finally, some recommendations from the Energy Committee. The first recommendation is to continue developing and implementing a life cycle cost policy for town purchases. The second recommendation is to implement recommended energy conservation measures from energy audits in the town buildings, which we'll be presenting to you hopefully soon. The third recommendation is to purchase additional net metering credits from the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District solar project, which is under development. Estimated annual savings are $50,000 annually. And the final recommendation is to investigate converting the methane generator at the wastewater treatment plant to a net metered system. Potential savings are in the order of $3,000 annually from that. So we're recommending looking into that. So we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Is there anything more that any of you want to add other than that presentation?
One other thing we've talked about a little bit, but not at length yet. When the wastewater treatment plant project was taking place, the town didn't yet have the life cycle policy, so some decisions were probably made about keeping the cost of the project down by making certain decisions. Whether at this point it makes any sense to look at certain retrofits that would cut down the operating costs from year to year, we don't know without taking a broader look at that. And is it too late to look at that or not? Don't know. But that's one thing. Another thing that we might also look at.
Thank you. Anybody on the board have any questions for members of the Energy Committee?
I would just say in general, I think the town has made tremendous progress in reducing energy costs and consumption over the past decade or more, and I think there are still opportunities which we'll uncover through the energy audits, which will save even more, but I think Brattleboro has been a leader in this area, and I just want to recognize that. I think we're really a model for other towns.
Could you go back one slide to the recommendations?
Yes.
I think the second one, the energy, looking at implementing the recommendations from the energy audits is something that's going to come on the agenda once we get the report.
Yep.
And net metering credits will, they're, I don't know, I think Bob already has a form to look over and sign on for those. So we're kind of underway on those. With the converting the methane generator, and I don't know that we have developed an articulated policy on life cycle costs. So I'd like to see those two on our agenda before too long.
Right.
Like before summer.
We don't have a formal life cycle policy. We have had some communication with the committee and outside the committee around that, and Lester Humphreys actually was very helpful in providing some formulas for use in that, and we'll actually At next week's select board meeting, we'll be discussing a life cycle comparison related to the police fire project as part of their continued weighing of the project options.
On that note, I'd just like to add that if there is serious consideration of the Black Mountain location, that's another building that will need an audit, and that should be taken into account in the costs of modifying that building for our use.
I know it's late, but I wonder if you would go back to the first chart slide, the annual cost one. Yeah, that one. I just want to point out once again, I keep hearing from people, oh, that damn Honeywell project, we're still paying for that. I just want to point out that what we're paying is the blue, and that the savings goes from the 6.6% where the blue starts all the way up to the 7.7%, which is significantly more than we're paying Honeywell. And every year it gets a little bit better. And so even though we're still sending them money, we're saving way more than we're sending. So, thanks. That's true.
And the temperature in this room is really well regulated.
Yeah.
So I really want to thank them for their work.
Because now I have frostbite.
Yeah, but look at all that savings. This is Howard News had on.
Yeah.
Like the heater.
Anything else on the Energy Committee report? Thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the request for the town meeting article on Brattleboro Climate Protection Board. We have your memo in the binder, and so really the question is whether you have anything to add beyond what's in the binder.
Not really. I would just summarize quickly by saying, asking the town to consider to continue its 12-year practice of placing our funding request on the warning. And I think I would say that Brattleboro Climate Protection's leadership has resulted in substantial savings to the town over the past 10 or more years, 14 years. And I think the town's support of Brattleboro Climate Protection has been a good investment for the town. So I appreciate you considering our request again this year.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Cameron at this point? Somebody want to make a motion?
Yeah, where'd it go?
It's right here.
I move that we add the following article to the representative town meeting warning for March 2016. To see if the town will raise and appropriate a sum not to exceed $10,000 to assist in funding Brattleboro climate protection for fiscal year 2017.
We have a motion to put a warning, article in the town meeting warning for $10,000 for Brattleboro climate protection. Is there any further discussion from anybody on the board? Anybody who's in attendance? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 4-0. Thanks for your work.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Thanks, Ted. Thanks, Michael. Next item is the request for a representative town meeting article from the Human Services Funding Committee. I'll just say that the town meeting decided 10 or 15 years ago to delegate responsibility for going through all of the human service funding requests to the Human Services Funding Committee. They've done their work, and I move as follows. I move to add the following article to the representative town meeting warning for March 2016 to see if the town will raise and appropriate the sum of $120,000 to support human service programs and facilities for the residents of Brattleboro to be allocated among service providers in the following manner. AIDS Project of Southern Vermont, $2,000. American Red Cross, New York and Vermont Region, $5,000. Boys and Girls Club, $15,200. Brattleboro Area Adult Day Gathering Place, $2,000. Brattleboro Hospice, $1,200. Brattleboro Senior Meals, $7,000. Family Garden, $2,500. Green Mountain RSVP, $700. Groundworks Collaborative, $20,000. Kids Place, $4,000. Meeting Waters YMCA, $5,000.
You want me to take over for that?
Sevka, $12,000.
Senior Solutions.
Senior Solutions, $2,800, sorry. Southeastern Vermont Community Action, Inc., Sevka, $12,000. Turning Point, $7,000. Vermont Wilderness School, $4,000. Vermont Center for Independent Living, $1,600. Visiting Nurse and Hospice of Vermont and New Hampshire, $7,500. Wyndham Child Care Association, $5,500. Wyndham County Safe Place Child Advocacy Center and Southeastern Unit for Special Investigations, $1,500. Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union Summer Food Program, $6,000. Youth Services Big Brothers Big Sisters, $7,500. Thanks, John, for offering.
No problem.
Is there any discussion about that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Next item on the agenda is the Fire Department Radio Tower. Chief and the Assistant Chief have both stayed a long time. Greetings.
Somebody's gonna call in sick tomorrow.
Don't have to, I just don't show up.
Good point. How would we know?
How can we help you this evening?
So in your packet, you have a memo from me. Over the last few months, we've been in discussions with Vermont PBS. They approached us back in September looking to lease some space on our radio tower on Central Station to put in an antenna up to help improve their signal. They have been working with Superintendent Newton over the communications aspects, and when they hammered out all the details, I looked at the lease option and forwarded it to Town Manager Elwell. He has looked at it. We have run it by legal and by Russell Rice to see if we were getting fair market value and everything. And we also did some research in a fair market value, and everything that we have gathered for information, it looks like we're within a good range of where this lease should be. Basically, right now, they just want the option until they do some more investigating. We have talked about the station project. We've talked about electrical costs. We've talked about moving equipment. I think we've covered it all in the option agreement, and I think it's a win-win for both sides. They get a better signal value, if you will, and we're creating a little bit of revenue for the municipality. And I would ask that the board approve that we move forward with this lease option.
Anybody have any questions about the proposed radio tower lease option?
Seems very good.
Somebody want to make a motion?
I move that we approve the option agreement and lease terms with Vermont Mtg, Inc., doing business as Vermont PBS, and to authorize the town manager to execute the option agreement.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Next matter on the agenda is the Elliot Street Bridge Project Utility Relocation Order. Peter?
Thank you. This is on your agenda for action tonight based on a request from the state. You recall from the presentation a couple of weeks ago and our other conversations about this that they are moving at warp speed to accomplish the deck replacement for us next summer at the Elliot Street Bridge. And there's just a few things that we need to do along the way to be helpful, and this is one of those. We've been assured that the communications with all these utility companies has given everybody sufficient notice that this work needs to be done. We know that to be true with the communication they've had with us about the fire line system through there. So it's a simple action for you tonight to approve issuing this order, which then places the utility companies on formal notice of the deadline for them to make their relocations.
Anybody have any questions about the utility relocation order that's necessary for the Elliott Street Bridge deck replacement? Then we're ready for a motion.
I move to approve the Town of Brattleboro relocation order as presented.
Is there any further discussion on the motion to approve the relocation order? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Next matter on the agenda is committee appointments. I'll call the item, but unfortunately I was on my way back from Bennington when we did the interviews, so for the contested positions, I don't think I'll vote. We have one open spot for the Arts Committee. It's Tom Namaya. One open spot for the Energy Committee, Mary McLaughlin, and then 3 people for one open spot on the Citizens Police Communications Committee. So does anybody want to make a nomination for the Arts Committee?
I move we accept the application of Town Mtg.
Any further nominations? All those in favor of Tom Namaya serving on the Arts Committee, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Do we have a nomination for the Energy Committee?
I nominate Mary McLaughlin to serve on the Energy Committee.
Any further nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of Mary McLaughlin serving the unexpired 2-year term on the Energy Committee, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Do we have nominations for the one open slot on the Citizens Police Communication Committee?
I nominate Ken McCaffrey.
Any further nominations? All those in favor of Ken McCaffrey being on the Citizens Police Communication Committee, please say aye.
Aye.
Everybody opposed or abstaining? I abstain because I wasn't at the interviews. That carries 4-0 with 1 abstention. Are there any further committee vacancies to be considered tonight? Next matter on the agenda is to schedule committee meetings for January. We have Tuesday meetings on the 12th and the 19th of January, and those are already set. So really the question is, when do we want to meet during the week of the 26th? And looks like Jan's moving over so we can see the calendar.
Thanks, Jan.
Thank you, Jan.
You're on your game tonight,
That's
Jan.
all right.
So 26th, Tuesday, I'm not available. I was hoping to do it some other night that week. Any other night works for me.
Real wrinkle.
And 3. So we just won't do it Tuesday?
I can't do the 28th or the 27th. That's going to put a real wrinkle in it.
How about the 25th?
Can we do it Monday the 25th?
Yep.
Is that within the window?
Monday the 25th it is, within the window? No motion is needed. Our last January meeting will be the 25th. Hopefully that will be the end of our 3 months of weekly meetings. I like you guys, but, you know,
It's nice,
I've had enough.
it's nice having 2 weeks
Jan will
off.
tell us what time we have to get here.
Yeah.
We'll set it for 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
Unless you want to do 5:30, can we do 5:30?
5:30?
5:30 public meeting, that way we can get home for dinner.
Yeah.
5:30.
5:30, January 25th.
All right.
Any further business to come in front of the meeting?
I move we adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thank you, everybody who's been watching on TV. Thank you, members of the press who've already left. Thank you, BCTV operators. Thank you, ASL interpreters. Good night.